welcome again, Stephen.
Thank you. I understand it'll be a bit of a wait, so if I disappear for a while until I'm called, is that all right? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, okay.
I can anyway.
Okay, sir, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Your Worship.
I'll ask for the calling of the roll, please.
Mayor Edie,
Present.
Reeve Iman,
Present.
Councillor Koulis, Councillor Evans,
Present.
Councillor Hines,
Present.
Councillor Jameson,
Present.
Councillor Sidney.
Present.
Everyone's here, sir.
Okay. A declaration of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay. Hearing none. Okay, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held electronically on February 9th, 2021 be adopted as printed. Need a mover for that, please. Councillor Hines, seconded by Councillor Evans. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. That the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held electronically on February the 17th, 2021 be adopted as printed. Again, I need a mover, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Koulis. Again, any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried.
What do you want, Kat?
Did I miss something there? That the communication from Robert Tremblay, President of the Association of Municipal Clerks and Treasurers of Ontario, AMCTO, dated February 18th, 2021, concerning staff professional development be received. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Hines. Any questions or comments on this? I think it's a point well taken, and we certainly have to keep up our staff training, in my opinion. Anyways, all in favor? Carried. That the communication from RC Fireworks dated February the 5th, 2021 concerning a request to amend bylaw 22-2005 known as Fireworks Bylaw be received. I further that Renfrew Town Council refer this request to the Fire and Emergency Management Committee for its review and recommendation. Mover, please. Councillor Koulis, seconded by Councillor Jamison. Again, any questions or comments on this? Councillor Sidney.
Just a point of clarification, maybe. I know it's going to go back to the emergency committee and then come back to council, but is there a reason why, if I'm reading this correctly, that you're only allowed to sell fireworks 2 days out of the year? Like, I don't understand why we'd have a bylaw for that. So I guess that'd be more the committee to look at, but if anybody has any clarification that can help me understand why we have this, I don't quite understand why we control when you can sell a firework.
Okay, Councillor Sidney, you're having a little trouble hearing you, but I don't know if Fire Chief Welch wants to make a comment on that.
Sir Kim Ballmer has joined, so he can answer, I think, a question.
Yeah, if I could, Mayor Edie, members of council, I do have some recollection of that bylaw being passed, and I think at the time the town didn't have a fireworks bylaw and certainly wanted to have one in place, and the main reason for it is to control the setting off of fireworks, and by controlling the sales to that period just before the days that you're allowed to set them off, made the most sense. If you're going to allow sales throughout the year, you're probably going to experience firework issues throughout the year. People aren't going to just hang on to them and let them off when they're able to. And I think that was the rationale. Control the sales, then you control the usage. And I think in this case, this this person that's requesting is looking at that bylaw and maybe allowing some, maybe some expansion of those allowable dates.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried. That the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting held February the 2nd, 2021 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Hines. Okay. I chaired that meeting and it was a very simple meeting. I think it was already been talked about a wee bit at another meeting, and it was just for an addition basically, and moving some stuff around on York Street and cleaning up the area as far as, because as part of the house was already on town property, etc. So it was pretty simple. It was certainly recommended and passed through committee quite easily. Any questions on that? Councillor Hines.
Just a comment on that. In my recollection of that meeting, it also, as you said, tidied up the property line in that there were a couple of sheds there that were on encroaching on town property, and they are going to be removed in the change of the way that the design of their build on is going to be. So that does really tidy up the property and make the road a little clearer there. So it is what we dealt with at the last council meeting. So you're very right on that,
Okay.
Your Worship.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, that the minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting held February the 2nd, 2021 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, seconded by Councillor Evans. Turn over to Councillor Hines for the report.
All right, this was our planning advisory meeting of February the 2nd, and we got right into the information that we had before us, a report in regard to the downtown seasonal encroachment guidelines that, as you know, we've been working on. That's the outside patios, but we've also summarized that to be minor and major encroachments. And the whole purpose of the policy, or creating this policy, is to ensure that neither pedestrian or vehicular traffic is impeded or hindered within the public right of way. That health and safety measures are adhered to, and that there is a standard design that is compatible with the heritage character of the downtown. So the Planning Advisory Committee and the Planning Department have been dealing with this for some time. We put it into a 2-tier encroachment so that there is a minor encroachment that there would be where people have simple cafe on the sidewalk, but without umbrellas or anything, or a sign, or perhaps it's the shoe store that has a tray of shoes out there, or a dress shop that has dresses just on the street for some special sale, but that's not a permanent structure. It's brought in on a daily basis at the close of business. Whereas the major one describes the extended greater than 1 meter from the building, and may include umbrellas, fencing, that kind of thing. So your outdoor patio type of thing, which is a more permanent in that it's seasonal structure. And so we tried to create some guidelines around that, so that the privilege of that encroachment onto the municipal property does still protect people who need to walk by or go by in wheelchairs, or that it's not crowding people off the sidewalk, those kinds of things. So during the meeting, we did have some of the public. It was great that they had tuned in and they offered some comments. And having said that, we took that all into consideration and have sent the planner back with it to incorporate some of those ideas and how we might make that work the best we can for all of those merchants. And so based on that discussion and feedback, we're going to have it tweaked a little bit and then have it back at our next planning meeting on March the 2nd. And then once we get that finalized there, it will come on to council for your perusal. Then we went into new and unfinished business. And as always, the planner was good enough to bring us up to date on some of the ongoing developments that are listed there. And we had a look at the financial update, and we also discussed the County of Renfrew official plan, that there is a report coming, very next item on your agenda. And yes, and there is one little correction on the minutes on the very last page, on page 4 of 4. It said the next financial committee meeting. We just got a little carried away there. It's the next planning meeting is March the 2nd. So if you just correct that, you'll see a corrected version of that next time. So that's my report in regard to the planning meeting. It was a very good meeting, a long meeting, but it was good. Any questions, comments? Okay, that will be it.
Says the host would like you to unmute, so I'm unmuted. All in favor? Carrie, sorry about that. Okay. The planner weathers report dated February the 18th, 2021 concerning the County of Renfrew's proposed official plan amendments be received. Mover, please. Councillor Hines, seconded by Councillor Evans. Turn it over to Planner Withers for his report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Eady and members of council. I'm trying out a headset today. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm audible. That's great. Okay, so tonight's report relates to official plan amendment 31, and it's the latest iteration in the saga of the County of Renfrew official plan review. And members of council will likely recall that last we left off with the county official plan, the province approved it last March as modified. And those two words are very significant because that means that they made changes to it and it ended up different than what the county had adopted. And council will recall that those changes were quite significant, both in terms of the language in the official plan and the effect that it has on municipalities, particularly those municipalities with their own detailed official plans. As you'll recall that the county official plan has always functioned as an official plan, primarily for those municipalities without their own. And then, you know, with some upper tier language in it as well. But primarily it's functioned that way, and that fundamentally changed last March when the province approved it as modified. Following that kind of episode, the province actually quite expeditiously delegated approval authority to the county for amendments to their official plan on a moving forward basis, which is not uncommon, but it hadn't been granted to the county yet. And what that means is that the county can amend its official plan moving forward without the need to send it to the province for approval. And that saves a bit of money because I think the review fee is significant, but it also provides the county with some flexibility and some freedom. But what I'll note is that that doesn't mean that the county doesn't have to implement provincial policy anymore. Provincial policy still exists and it still applies to the County of Renfrew. The provincial policy statement hasn't gone anywhere. It's updated as of last year, but it's still in effect. So the county does have to be somewhat careful in amending its official plan, ensuring that it continues to implement provincial policy, because if it doesn't, the province has the ability to take the delegated approval authority back just as quickly as it granted it. So I think that's something the county is aware of. So they've put forward OPA 31 in an attempt to return the official plan for the county of Renfrew largely back to what existed before the province modified it. And I think that's great. I think that it's worked well for the county of Renfrew for a long time, and I don't think there's really any reason to go back or to change things beyond that. So the county is bringing back a lot of the same effect in terms of how it applies to urban municipalities like the town of Renfrew with its own official plan. So it will be effectively status quo for us, again, back to kind of pre-March 2020, which is great. That said, the county is still, including some elements that, I think they're trying to acknowledge some of the requirements of the provincial policy statement in the policies that they're proposing through OPA 31. And you probably have heard by now that there's a couple of them that have been really gotten some attention, and they relate to development within proximity to settlement areas. Now, I'll note that for the town of Renfrew, that's not a new thing. Our official plan prohibits development outside of our settlement area boundary. So and a settlement area is not always contiguous with a municipal boundary. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. In the town of Renfrew, we do have some portions of our settlement area boundary, which is where buildings and development already exists, that line up with the municipal boundary. There are some parts where it doesn't. An example would be Opiongo Road. Okay, there's a lot of land back on Opiongo Road that's outside of land that is designated for development, but it's still within the town of Renfrew. So the town of Renfrew official plan already prohibits development on land that is not designated for growth right now. We call that designated growth area. That means it is not to be developed right now, but it will be in the future. The county official plan and some of the changes and amendments that it's proposing through these two new policies in OPA 31 are trying to kind of replicate that in a certain sense. And the reason that is because the provincial policy statement 2020 isn't as clear as the previous provincial policy statement was in regards to what appropriate rural development is. So I think there's some guidance that's intended to be provided through that, through the county OP. And then also the idea of protecting the integrity of the ability of the urban boundary and the serviced area to expand. So as the idea behind long range planning is that as things develop, you want it to happen near existing development, like right beside it, ideally. You don't want to be kind of jumping all over the place, because then it becomes hard to design your services. You have to know exactly where pipes are going to go, what the elevations are going to be, what your roads are going to look like. And if you're kind of all over the place, you're going to end up with pipes that don't line up and everything else. And it just can get pretty ugly. So that's kind of the big idea behind contiguous development. And so I think some of the an example of Whitewater region, for example, it's the same municipality, but they have land outside of the urban boundary that is that if you developed it today and you wanted to then expand the urban boundary and extend services, you could be making it difficult to service it in the future when it becomes appropriate to do so. So that's kind of the idea. I hope it's somewhat clear, and if there are any questions about the rationale behind that in planning terms, I'm certainly happy to answer them. I know those, it's not always clear as to why why can't a person, when they own land, develop it when they want to do that? And the rationale is essentially, what I just explained. You want it to be contiguous. You want it to be orderly. You want to make sure that as you develop and extend services, it is efficient, and that you don't end up with, issues with design and things like that. So I think those are my comments. If there are any questions about specific policies, I'll note that Appendix A, most of the policies in Appendix A do not apply to the town of Renfrew. So, I think a lot of the rural municipalities will have more interest in these amendments, and rightly so, because they use the official plan for the county of Renfrew as their detailed official plan. For the town of Renfrew, it looks like for the most part, it's going back to what we had before, which is a bit more flexibility. And I think those are my comments, Mayor Eady, at this time.
Just before I turn it over to questions, one point of clarity. At the planning meeting, I understood it that there would be a 1 kilometer border all around the town of Renfrew that Horton or Edmiston Bromley would not be able to develop. I don't recall that ever being, or was ever in their old situation. Is that a true fact or not?
Through you, Mayor Eady, that's those 2 policies that you're talking about. Those are new. Okay, those have been added. That is not going back. Those are not existing policies. So those are new policies. That's correct. And it's not related to, I just want to make sure everyone's clear. It's not related to a municipal boundary. It's related to a settlement area boundary. Okay, which at some points of our settlement area boundary, for example, the Lapine project. Okay, our settlement area boundary is right there because we have land designated residential right there, all the way to the back of the Lapine site. That also happens to be the municipal boundary for Horton. Okay, but that's not always the case. And that's why I brought up Whitewater Region. Whitewater Region has a couple settlement areas that are, probably going to be growing. Same municipality, but that policy would apply to them in the same way. So it applies specifically to settlement area boundaries. Maybe just to that point, Mayor Eady, before I move on, and I just want to reinforce, the town of Renfrew, people that own land in the town of Renfrew that are not within the existing settlement area boundary are not able to develop right now under the town of Renfrew official plan. Okay, and the county official plan kind of replicates that. So, so that when you move on the other side and, into Horton or Admast and Bromley, where the town of Renfrew official plan doesn't apply, there's a whole different set of rules, and, it could potentially cause problems. So I just want to reinforce that. In the town of Renfrew, we already have effectively this policy in place. You cannot develop in designated growth areas until the urban boundary expands, to your point.
That's right in their own municipality, though.
That's correct, yes.
Now, Codyville, or not Codyville, let's say Thompson Hill is an example. That's a settlement area, correct?
It'd be a rural settlement area, yeah.
That means 1 kilometer inside Renfrew, we couldn't develop anything if this policy went through. It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It has to be even.
Eric, are you going to reply?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Is the question that could you not do outside of Codyville in the same way?
Well, if Codyville was a settlement,
right,
and Renfrew property that was deemed residential, we wouldn't be able to build on it because Codyville's a settlement, or Thompsonville's a settlement.
Yeah, it specifically relates to serviced settlement areas. So when you have a settlement area that has water and sewer, the idea is that the development on the fringes, on the boundaries of those service settlement areas is limited. So it wouldn't apply to rural settlement areas that are on well and septic.
Okay. Turn over for questions or comments. Revimo.
Yeah, I raised this issue, I guess, about 6 months ago when the first rendition came back. And it caught the attention of our rural neighbors. And I think in the presentations to the planning division, of the 13 responses they got, I think 11 of them all pointed it out. And then there were 2 urban centers as well that pointed it out. So I think it's got some traction. And I think too, all of the other points are relevant as well that are featured here. This is not the first time I've seen the list. And I think just to, if I might go back to what Planner Withers said on page 2, his discussion point where he says notwithstanding, and he talks about that if the county has to be consistent with the provincial policy statement. Another consequence of that is if they're not, they could lose the delegated authority. But also, what could happen is if the county staff come back with a recommendation and county council in their wisdom or deciding to push back rule in opposition to it, then we'd be in the unfortunate position of not having the services of our staff because they would have to defend it while we had to go out and get consultants to argue on our behalf. So it's a pretty interesting position to be in. And at this point, everybody I think in the chambers is involved in the discussion, and I think there's a fair level of support for the position about the boundary problem. And you're right, Your Worship, it was in the initial draft that came back, there was the 1 kilometer ring. And there has been some change in language. I'm not sure where that is right now. I may know more next month after another development and property meeting, but no, I had raised it and we'll continue to raise it. And I think it's got pretty good legs within the chambers as well. There is just the realization that it doesn't make much sense. And there's a chance to intensify development outside of our boundaries if the services are there to be extended. Do you want 40 1-acre lots, 40 homes, or do you want 400 on 40 acres or whatever the magic number is? It seems, we talk about intensification, that seems to fly in accordance with that policy. And I think one of the other ones too that's of interest is the one about the numbers. 1.3 sub 8, where it talks about deletes reference to population projections as allocation. So I think there's been some progress there, because there was the feeling that if the county was only allowed 2,000 people between now and 2031 or whatever, and Aaron Pryor had a development, or McNabb Braeside, at 650. Does that mean the rest of us only get 1,400? And Petawawa was always growing. So, we're worried about it being a lottery or some kind of a shell game in terms of moving the numbers around. So that was that's been pushed back too. So those were, for me, those were the 2 significant points that touched on our, on the town. I agree with Planner Withers. That was a point I was going to bring up when we got a little closer to our own official plan and zoning, was our policy does mimic that which is presented by the province, and was wondering if there was some means of either changing that, rewording it, or redefining it so it's a little more appealing to people who want to develop larger tracts of land. So I'm glad he brought that up, because I was trying to figure out a way to either bring it up, or I was going to send him a text tomorrow and say, by the way. So it's that's a conversation I think we're going to have at a local level as well.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Director Aslan.
Yes, just a comment to Reeve Emel's last point. There's a lot of municipal supporting documentation that would have to be looked at. And certainly like the water and sewer master plans have projected development and growth and figured out how those areas are going to be serviced within the next 25 years. So part of the official plan review might be the time to do that. And we may need to update the water and sewer master plans to determine how those areas could potentially be serviced. So there is some servicing implications, but certainly can be looked at.
Thank you. Never fear, as in my advancing years, I recognize things don't happen because we pass a motion at a meeting and then it changes the direction overnight. But yes, thank you for that.
Well, I got to say this, under no circumstances can I support this. Whatever what I would have supported is, and this is what I really hate about this type of control is, in our case, Horton and Edmondson, Brownlee and Redford should have sat down and talked about the different lands we have around us and maybe what some of the future plans may be. If we ever annexed any of them properties, you can be sure if they developed into residential properties, we would service them. We would have to service them. So there's always possibilities of deals being made or something going forward. But to move forward to this, town of Renfrew saying to our neighbors, I'm sorry, you can't build there. And the landowners, I'm sorry, you own the land, but you don't have any control over what you're doing with it. I personally, myself, I will not support it until, if there was something come back to the table in negotiations with our municipalities which are around us, I think it might be a little more fair. To me, this is just shoving something down the throats of our neighbors, which I feel is very, very unfair, very unfair. Anyway, that's my take on it. I'm not going to beat around the bush. That's exactly how I feel. And that's exactly how I'll be voting in the next motion coming up. Anything else? Councillor Hines.
Your worship, I have to agree with you on this, and that's why we rose it to planning, that we were able to talk about it, because that is very disturbing that we would kind of shut our neighbors out like that. And I mean, it is one small part of it, but it's a big part for us who want to work together with our neighbors and join forces. And, you know, if we can sell those services across the border between the town of Renfrew and another municipality, then that would be the thing to do. And that's, you know, to me, that's the direction that the provincial government wanted us to move in, is to be sharing services and doing what we can to enhance those different opportunities to work together. So I have to totally agree with you on that. I'm not happy with it. And they did ask for comments, and I think that's very important that we move forward and do provide some comments to them. And that was my whole reason for asking it to be put on the planning, that we could at planning at least have that say. And there was a big concern about any type of border that we would kind of circle around our town, that we would not, it's almost like a moat, don't let anybody in. And I totally agree that what's good for their municipality is good for ours, and what's good for ours is good for theirs. So I can't support this at this time.
Any other questions or comments? Review more.
So I'm not sure I understand what the comments are, because the county did ask for comments from the town. So my impression is that based on Planner Withers' report, he's making these suggestions about what the town can support. So is that what we're doing? Is that what we're voting on? Are we voting on?
There's a motion coming forward, our next motion, Revimo, about the town accepting the report. So that maybe that'll explain it to you when we get to that.
I hope so.
Okay. All right, anything else?
So if I might, so if this is not the town's position on the official plan amendments, then what is?
That'll be the next motion. The one we have here in front of us is just to receive the report here.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I am confused because everybody says they're not voting on this.
We're
Okay.
only voting to receive the report here,
Okay,
which is fine. So all in favor of receiving the report? Okay, that's carried. Now, this is the motion here that may clarify it. And I get council members don't have copies of the motions, so it makes it a little more difficult. Okay, the Renfrew Town Council support the proposed amendments to the county Renfrew official plan insofar as they apply to the town of Renfrew, subject to the county advising the town of any further revisions to the amendments. I need a mover, please. Emo, second by Councillor Koulis. Okay, now we'll throw it open for discussion again. Councillor Sidney.
Maybe Planner Withers can help me out here. I'm a little confused as to what are we voting on? Because we hear Mayor and Councillor Hines saying they're not supporting this, but is it the change? Like what exactly is it doing here? Like, I don't know if I'm just a little foggy today because it's been a long day, but can somebody help me out here?
I can try to assist Mayor Edie if that's
Absolutely, please
that'd
do.
be okay. Okay, so the county has asked for comments on their draft official plan, and the town is not required to send comments, but if council does want to issue some comments, normally it would take the form of just something on letterhead. I can issue them, or Mayor Edie can issue them under his signature. But in terms of the vote tonight would be the substance of our letter, of our comments to the county on their proposed amendments to their official plan. So if council is not inclined to support the proposed policies as is, then certainly council, or if there's specific policies, it sounds like it's specifically the policies pertaining to growth adjacent to settlement area boundary that is potentially an issue. So if those are specific policies that council wants to identify that they are not in support of, but are okay with the rest of it, I think that's just the clarity that at the staff level we need so that we can prepare comments and issue those to the county.
So with the motion that's coming up, we are voting on accepting it as is, or are we actually going to throw in these, concerns of the distance between two properties?
So Mayor Edie, through you, my sense of it would be that that council would have to refuse the recommendation of staff and then table an alternative motion. And I've seen the deputy clerk's camera come on, so I will defer to her for procedural things here.
So yes, we don't have to, we have a mover and a seconder, but we don't have to carry the motion. And Planner Withers can take your comments and bring this report back to the next council meeting. Is that what I'm understanding, Eric?
We can do that. We can take it back, but just in the interest of time, if council is pretty sure that they don't want to support a policy like this, then we can certainly discuss that this evening, and council can bring forward an alternative motion. If council would like staff to prepare another motion and bring it back to the next council meeting, I think that would be fine too.
Revimon?
has made a suggestion that maybe we table this and bring it back to another meeting with certain comments. Now, one thing I would ask though, Revimo, is I understood this is going to county council this week.
Not that I'm aware of. There was an interim report, but I don't know that there is something. I haven't seen anything that says there's an addendum added to it, so I'll look again.
Through you, Mayor.
Right, my position is pretty clear. I'm not supportive of it for a number of reasons. The boundary is the biggest issue for me, so.
Mayor Eady, Kim Ulmer just signed on. Sorry, Eric. Did you want to see what he has to say?
Okay,
Yeah,
Councilman.
thank you.
Rick Bomer, do you have something you want to say?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that, Mayor Eady and members of council. I think, you have a report in front of you with a recommendation from the town planner. I think it's fairly clear. It's to endorse or to support the County of Renfrew's draft official plan amendments as presented. I think it would be probably wise to deal with that. And if council wants then to, because I'm not so sure what else the planner can take away and bring back in a couple weeks time. So I think it's clear to me that if there's not support of this, to vote against the motion and then to bring forth another motion from council saying that they're not supportive of that particular policy statement.
Okay. So then,
Otherwise, I think
basically,
some
on the
clear
motion-
direction has to be given to the planner.
On the motion then that I just read, Councilor Hines, I see you have your hand up there. Do you want to go ahead and make comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say there are parts of this that I certainly agree with, and item number 1 would be the first thing. And I'm a bit like Revimo. The biggest problem I have is that border around us. But maybe if we're going to deal with water rates next week, perhaps we could take a time after that and go through this report and what points are okay with council and what points are not. I'm not sure that voting down the report is where I want to be. I mean, it's here before us, and certainly the planner needs some direction. But I think there are points in this report that are quite fine with me, but there are points that are not. So that don't sit well, and I think that's what we need to deal with. I hate to just throw it out as we don't want it.
Councilor Jamison, then Revimo.
Okay, well, if you go down about halfway through the report before the discussion, it says alternatives considered. And the alternative number 2 is to adopt an alternative recommendation as approved by council. So that tells me that they're looking, if we don't adopt what they want, they're looking for our input. So could we not do that?
I don't see where you're getting that.
So it's
On page 2 of the report.
yeah, on page 2 of the report, about just almost near the bottom. It says alternatives considered, 1 and 2. 1 is to support the recommendation. 2 is to adopt an alternative recommendation as approved by council. So is that it?
That could possibly be the next motion then.
Okay.
But those are the alternatives put forward by the planner.
Okay.
And that's what I was saying. If we're going to adopt this or change it, we need to review this and say, item number 1, yes, we want that, or have some discussion on it. I mean, there is a matter of 32 items here, and I think it's some verbiage from all of council of which items you're quite happy with, and then move along from there.
I don't disagree with that at all. Revimo.
Thank you. With regards to tomorrow, I just quickly pulled open my my package for tomorrow. And so that County Council receive and review providing staff direction on the changes made in the draft official plan, and further that the revised OPA 31 be circulated upon council approval to the prescribed public bodies in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. So they're circulated. There were 9 responses. And that's the summaries of those comments were provided as recommendations. So these comments, or this chart will be going, or something similar to it, because I can't go fast enough to find it on my BlackBerry. But these comments will be provided to council and they'll discuss them as well. So I'm curious as to see how that's going to turn out tomorrow.
Well, that'll be interesting as well to get a report back on that. Okay. Councillor Koulis, did I see your hand up a bit ago and I forgot to get to you?
Oh, you didn't.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mayor Edie, Clerk Bulmer would like to speak again.
Yeah, and sorry, I'm not sure if you maybe understood exactly what I was saying. I've listened to the conversation, and the only thing I heard was some difference of opinions, with the exception of that one policy. And we have a report in front of you from the planner, and I'm saying if it's not supported in full, you defeat that recommendation and you pass a subsequent one saying that you support the proposed amendments with the exception of, and state it, and that's the council direction. But if there's certainly other points that you want to clarify within those 30 some odd policy changes, and that's certainly different if you just need more time to do that. But from what I heard, it was just that one policy that you had certainly difficulty with. Sorry.
Well, personally, I don't understand the whole thing, to be quite honest with you. I understand parts of it, but it's that one item that I'm certainly opposed to, but how the other things are affected by. So to my way of thinking, we need to do a vote on this motion only. And then if we need to go further down the road, and maybe when we get something back from the county, if there's a meeting tomorrow, I'm sure that there will be something on that. And then as Councillor Hines mentioned, maybe Planner Withers can get into more detail on some of the other items, because I think there's probably some really good stuff in there and whatever. So if it's okay with council, we go ahead and vote on this motion. Do you want me to read it one more time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That the Renfrew Town Council support the proposed amendments to the County of Renfrew official plan insofar as they apply to the town of Renfrew, subject to the county advising the town of any further revisions to the amendments. We have a mover and a seconder. So if there's is there any further discussion on it? Okay, and all in favor? Opposed? Okay, I didn't gather, Reeve, why you didn't vote on it. You just abstaining, or?
No, I'm not sure. I don't think it was fair to provide staff with no direction and then to just sort of leave this out on a limb. So short of having a plan forward, I think I'll just sit and wait and see what happens.
Do you want Eric and I to come up with a new motion to provide to you in a little bit, and we can keep going with the meeting? No, my guess is saying no.
No, I think it's more appropriate that the council considers.
Okay. Dr. Asplin and then Councillor Hines.
Yes, so I've listened to the discussion as well, and I see that you have some concerns with the suggestion that there be some kind of boundary that restricts development of the adjacent municipality. So we are not sort of party to the approval process of an official plan amendment for a development in another municipality. But I think what you're getting at, and if I'm reading between the lines, is you would like to come up with some kind of language that supports development adjacent to our municipality, if it's reasonable and logical and provides efficient servicing options. So I believe it's going to take a little bit of time to come up with exactly the language that we want to provide the county with on this particular item, to sort of guide them in setting their policies and their official plan. So to try to come up with a motion tonight, I believe we're not likely going to consider all of the elements that need to be seriously considered.
I agree.
If I may, Mayor Edie, perhaps as an option, I could draft up a letter that reflects what seems to be the discussion this evening, and that could be considered by council at the next meeting. Instead of trying to give me content for the letter, I'll draft the letter up for you. Council takes a look and we kind of go from there. I don't know if that makes any more sense.
And maybe Reed Emo could answer this. You said something about 9 responses. Was county looking for a response after tonight's meeting for tomorrow's meeting?
No, well, yes, yes, there'll be a second layer of responses, I'm assuming. But there was a request sent out, I think before Christmas, but I don't remember exactly, to all municipalities asking for a response.
I don't recall. Councillor Hines, you had another comment?
I think that probably Eric's choice of how to deal with this, and seeing that it's already coming to the table tomorrow at County Council, would be our best way to handle this. But I really think that it deserves some time for all of council to comment, or is the boundary the big problem here with all of these other things? I mean, Eric has laid this out very nicely to tell you what has changed in the plan, in the official plan, and you know what has been amended, or is it the same as before? And if you read through those comments, some of them are pretty straightforward, and yeah, that's great, and let's go with that. And then other ones, there may be some clarification needed, and I really think that unfortunately we should have spent a little more time on this to address each of those points and understand that boundary for sure. But I have read enough on it that I don't, and had a very long discussion with the planner about it, and don't really feel comfortable with it. So that's my biggest problem. But I just think that this deserves some more airtime here for all of council to have their comments on it. And that was apparent from the vote that we weren't comfortable with just passing it through.
So we're okay to leave this then with Planner Withers' last statements?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one then is that bylaw 11-2021, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 30-2012, being a bylaw to appoint bylaw enforcement and property standards officers to be read a first time and being deemed to have been read a second time. Mover, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Sidney. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Hines. You're on mute, Councillor Hines.
Sorry, but I just I guess I need an understanding from, this came from the Human Resources Committee, and I'm not sure where it came from.
It's from the Clerk's Department, Councillor Hines. It's
okay,
just,
and is it a renewal of our present bylaw?
It's not a renewal. It's just an updating of lists. They hire and officers leave periodically. So if you see the Schedule A, it's just an updated list should they have to go to court.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Any other questions? All in favor? Carried. The bylaw 11-2021, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 30-2012, being a bylaw to appoint bylaw enforcement and property standards officers, be read a third time and be passed. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Hines. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Okay, whereas Renfrew Town Council in its meeting held December 15th, 2020, passed bylaw number 81-2020.
Mayor Adie, may I interrupt you for a moment?
Absolutely.
You missed the admin and economic development minutes. I'm sorry.
Number 11?
Yes, no, Number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can just read it
I
for
don't have a
you.
number 9. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So it's that the minutes of the Admin, Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting held February 3rd be received.
Okay, mover, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Jamison. So I guess we turned over to Councillor Jamison for the report.
Okay, so this was our February 4th meeting. And so I'll just move you right down to 7.1. So Director Hill and Clerk Bulmer. So these, Director Hill came and updated us regarding our digital signs and communications. And so he's looking, he's put together a marketing package for selling advertising on the signs. So he's also interested in actually having, hiring a part-time person, possibly a part-time person or a contract employee to handle the scheduling of this advertisements on the signage, and also looking to possibly incorporate that person to help out with other communication throughout the other departments. And Clerk Bulmer, actually, he added as well that between all the different things that the communication coming out of the clerk's department and with their marketing student, it's taking about 90%. It's the equivalent of 90% of a full-time position. So Clerk Bulmer and Director Hill will be bringing back a report to council regarding that, regarding the potential of a new hire. And then if we move down to 8.2, so this is the digital training update. So EDO McEwen informed us that she was able to get 18 confirmed businesses for the training. Now, she did tell me it is going really well. She did tell me today that they had their first webinar last Wednesday and it was a success. So that's exciting for the town of Renfrew, knowing that there are businesses who have taken advantage of this. And then 8.3 is the update on property sales. So Clerk Bulmer did update us on the O'Farrell, Thompson, and the Nautico developments. And so he's still working on the surplus inventory. And he has reached out for some samples from some of his provincial colleagues for RFPs for a realtor. So just saying this because the last meeting there's a little bit of confusion. Once Clerk Bulmer has all of this information together, it will be coming back to all of council to be involved on whether there is any of the town of Renfrew's property that is going to be sold, or if there isn't. It'll also be, all of us will make that decision on the value. Obviously we're going to want to get it as close to market value as possible because that's the whole point in it. And we don't want any of this property being sold, being undervalued and sold at a ridiculous price of like $1,500 or $2,000. So it's going to be a council decision. It's just a matter of giving Clerk Bulmer the information, getting all the information so he can bring it back to all of council. And then the next item was the sad one, the Renfrew Bluegrass Working Committee met and we have decided to cancel our Bluegrass Festival this year. And so most of the music festivals have been canceled anyways. So we're just going to move forward and start working towards the 2022 and hopefully it'll be a really great festival. So that's all for that meeting. If there's any questions, I can do my best to answer them.
Any questions, council members? Councillor Sidney.
Just more of a comment. I'm actually participating in that online marketing thing with Tubman Marketing, and it's actually very well done. And I think the feedback from it wouldn't surprise me if it's done again in the future because tomorrow's our second day, and It's very, very well done with some great knowledge and great networking. So kudos to the town and the economic development officer for getting it together, because it is very well done.
That's great. That's good news.
Okay, anything else? Okay, hearing nothing, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the motion I just read, I believe we have a mover or seconder, Clerk Bomer or Jennifer, either one of you.
When I interrupted you, I lost the mover and seconder. So if we could do that again, sir.
Maybe we just start over again. Okay, I'll read the motion. The bylaw 11-2021 being the bylaw to amend bylaw.
No, sir, I did get that one.
You got it?
Yeah, so we're on to number 12.
Okay.
If you had a mover and a seconder for 12,
Yes,
I did miss
we
that.
did have some discussion. Any further discussion on it?
No, you did not read the motion, sir, for number 12. That's the,
I'm on number 10.
no, we can go right to number 12. We did 10 and 11. I let that go ahead and then brought us back to the minutes.
I don't recall.
Yeah, and remember Councillor Hines had the question about why this was coming forward about the bylaw enforcement officers.
Who was the mover and seconder on number 11?
Number 11 was Councillor Evans and Councillor Hines.
Okay,
So we're on to 12.
Ooh.
Sorry about that, sir.
that's fine. I'm fine. Okay. You're the boss. Okay.
Today.
Okay, now I get it. I'm sorry. It's got 14 different files going here. Whereas Renfrew Town Council in its meeting held December 15, 2020, passed bylaw number 81-2020 to enter into an agreement with Stephen Fournier Consulting Services, FCS, to implement a work plan for municipal structure transition to a chief administration officer model for the town of Renfrew. And whereas it's necessary to formalize a source of funding for the work to be completed as part of the implementation work plan. And therefore be it resolved that the cost associated with this agreement be financed from the modernization fund to the total upset limit of 21,000 plus HST. Okay, I need a mover for that, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Koulis. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay. Okay, the presentation entitled Renfrew County COVID-19 Vaccination Plan, Municipalities Planning Group for Renfrew and area be received, and further that Chief Welch be heard before council to provide an update. Need a mover on that, please. Councillor Jamison, second by Councillor Evans. Turn it over to Chief Welch for the report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to be clear, the slide deck that was used as the point of conversation for the meeting last Thursday, which the mayor and I attended, has been presented to all members of council, and I believe it's included in the package tonight. Is there a wish to go through that by the members of council, or shall we just hit the highlights, if I may be so bold to suggest?
Councillor
Just
Hines.
the highlights then?
Sorry, Councillor Hines, you're still muted.
I do think it's important for the public to hear as much as information as you're able to provide them, for the simple reason that that is the question on the street, and we get tasked with that when you go to the grocery store or anywhere. People want to know what we know about it, and I think it is important to let them know that you were at the meeting and what happened there. So not to be onerous about it, but I do think it is important to know, for the viewing public to know what was discussed there. Just my opinion on it.
So I would suggest you go through, especially all the important points, Chief Welch.
All right, I'm not sure if I have the ability to screen share. No, it's been disabled by the host. What I would do then is throw up a number of the different slides that I thought were pertinent and salient for how we got to, or how we've got to where we're at right now.
Chief Welch, I just made you the co-host.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So what I've got up here is, there was a slide deck that was commensurate of about 30 slides. What I've jumped to is slide number 4, which is basically an identification of the planning assumptions that have been used. Is everybody able to see that fairly clearly? Or I could go to the full slide program if that's easier for everyone to see.
Perhaps go to the full slides, Chief Welsh.
That helps.
That's much better.
Excellent. All right. So as I suggested, there was a number of different information attached to the first few slides. This identifies some of the assumptions that have been built into the system that has been created. This is a County of Renfrew document that has been developed as a result of their established responsibility from the provincial government to come up with a vaccine distribution plan within the county. As you will see throughout the 7 identified priority assumptions, planning assumptions, we get down to about number 5. We identify that there's a significant volatility, for lack of a better word, of the current primary vaccines that we will be receiving within the county. There is a number of different documents at a federal and a provincial level that identify how these vaccines will be distributed and at what rates they will be received and sent out to the different provinces. What we see in slide number 6 is the identified targets for our area with the county of those individuals 16 and over. They've identified 90,000 individuals, 90,000 plus, with an expectation of achieving a 75% vaccination rate for that population, a target of 68,000. That requires somewhere in the neighborhood of 136,000 vaccine doses. That provides us with those 2 shots that provide the greatest level of effectiveness for the vaccines. And one of the things that they've considered significantly is the hesitancy. What was described in a conversation with the ministries and the municipalities this afternoon as a 20-60-20 model, in as much as there are 20% of the population roughly that are steadfastly opposed to a vaccination process. There are 20% of the population that are adamantly in support of that and will be seeking out the vaccination. And there's approximately 60% of any population that are non-committal at this point in time. They tend to lean towards the non-vaccine side, but there's an effort that's going to need to be taken to ensure that to achieve our 75% target rate, we have a significant amount of uptake from those individuals. I'm going to jump ahead to 2 slides. Actually, I'll pause here momentarily. The governance model that's been set up, we see that Renfrew District Health Unit has partnered with a number of residents within the county already. We have seen them establish clear roles and responsibilities to determine and document in relationship to the immunization plan. There is at a county level 2 different working groups that we'll probably see in the next slide. The county command table is the one that seems to be working the hardest and most. I think they've had up to 4 weeks worth of participation to roll down to the local communities the efforts to ensure that citizens within those communities are able to gain the vaccines. So this is the table that we have that represents the structure within Renfrew County. You'll see at the very top, the Renfrew County District Command Table and the composition thereof. And then there are 3 more areas that have responsibilities within that: the Renfrew County District Vaccination Priorities Prioritization Committee and its composition, the regional lead tables. So an organization within the structure that identifies the need and the desire geographically to establish local planning tables, which are immediately listed below. Then an organization for the development of communications within the county and to assist those local planning tables in ensuring that the information flows out as best as possible. You can see there are 5 different areas within the county that have been identified as local planning tables: Arm Prior and area, Barry's Bay and area, Deep River and area, Pembroke and area, and Renfrew and area. So you see the different communities that those lead local planning tables are composed of. So I think that the next one, yes, identifies within the local tables, the command table, and then we get the current membership of that. And then we get to number 9, where we can see within the local planning tables, each of the 5 designated areas will have their own local planning table, which are composed of Renfrew District Health Unit representatives, the paramedics, the hospital within the area, which for us will be RVH, primary care and community health center representations, as well as municipalities, pharmacies, and other sectors. The consistency throughout this is representation from the county, because the district health unit is charged with the responsibility of ensuring that we have immunization within our communities and achieving that provincial and federal targeted participation of 75% of the population. Here are the proposed roles that the municipalities and the public health participants within those tables have. It is the expected responsibility of the municipalities to participate in planning as appropriate, whether that's an emergency control group structure that they've established through the planning table, to provide venues to host mass immunization clinics, to provide staff support and administrative or other supports for vaccination clinics, such as traffic flow, establish, set up, tear down, and security. And then the one of the largest, I believe, based on the vaccine hesitation, will be the share communications on the rollout, whether that be when the registration process is established, how to register for your shots, whether that's the location and the times of those events where they're going to have the opportunity to get their vaccines. The model that the county, the local planning table has gone with, and as it has across the county, is to use a phrase that it was in Reeve Imon's report, the bricks and mortars approach. This is the most familiar process that they have, and one of the ones that they have the greatest success rate with, based on influenza clinics of the most recent past. And as such, they've chosen to roll down that same road with reference to the municipality's expectations. In our case, it would be to provide opportunity at Mattaway to have these vaccination clinics. The true final model of that has not been finalized, whether it's a parking lot roll through, as we see in some of our American neighbors presently, or whether that's a indoor facility that's less susceptible to climate change and possibly more friendly to a long-term setup without the perpetual teardown. That's left to be decided by our local planning table. These are the representatives of our local planning table, as you can see from the 4 different municipalities that are part of that local planning table. And I'm going to just finish off here with the local priorities of the population. The prioritization has come from the provincial and federal government down as to how we will administer these to give us the greatest success rates. There is multiple phases that are planned, and I will jump down to tiles 23 and 24, slides 23 and 24 in a moment, to identify where we're at. Currently within the county, all long-term care facilities and congregate living groups, such as retirement homes, have had the opportunity to have their first inoculation. So from the perspective of the protection of our most vulnerable, including the staff that support those, we're well on our way to achieving that presently. The opportunity for the significant members of the population to avail themselves of the shots, if they're interested in, comes in at what is identified with our plan of phase 2. So this slide is very convoluted and very difficult to read, even when you don't have other things on the screen. This is something that I've seen at a provincial and a federal level, just identifying the different phases, but the following slides have a little bit clearer representation of that. So I'll move towards those. Phase 1 has been achieved for the most part. As I suggested, they're the highest priority healthcare workers and the very high priority healthcare workers. It goes on to identify them here in the list as to who fits into those categories of highest priority and very high priority. Next priority on phase 1, which has been somewhat accomplished through the process of our long-term care and congregate care settings have been achieved. Then we get into the high priority and moderate priority and the lists of numbers of vaccinations that have provided both on site and planned for staff members at 100 Health Village Lane for our different facilities in town, the Bonnechere Manor, Groves Park, where they have 96 residents that have all completed dose number 1. Quail Creek that have had 76 residents identified, and they're going to do a vaccination on site there, as well as McKay Manor, which again, there's 7 residences and they're determining a date for those based on the supply that the province distributes down to the county. Community living, again, we haven't finalized that. There was a meeting, I believe, last Friday between the members of RVH and the representative from the community living to identify the number of vaccinations they required. And then the Renfrew Victoria Hospital, they're dealing with beyond those that have already received it, how they're going to be distributing those to the caregivers and the frontline workers. Phase 2 is where we start to see an opportunity within our community. These are numbers that they've used to identify the doses, or sorry, the populations from each one of the communities that fit into the prioritized or phase 2 category. Healthcare workers and adults age 65 plus. As you can see here in Renfrew, they've identified that at 2,300. Meridi, I think at the meeting you weren't confident with that number. Have you had a chance to do any research on that by any?
I did have a conversation the following day with Tanya McGregor on it, and Southern Attic. I'll explain that in a minute here, maybe.
Right. So some of the details that they have established for the timelines, they're looking at April to July of 2021 to accomplish the phase 2 mass community in vaccinations. There will be more planning, which we started on the 18th. There will be more planning going forward, but obviously they're dealing with an effort to try and target the greatest vulnerable population. So it'll be 80 plus, and then working the way slowly back through with increments to 5-year increments to get to that age of 65 that would, once completed, see us move into the next phase, which would be phase 3, remaining eligible residents within Renfrew area, which age is 16 and plus. And of course they're targeting to start that on August. And these again are the numbers that they identify within each one of the geographic areas that compose our planning table to achieve the desired results of, I believe these are the targeted populations for the 75%, but this may be the total number. So that's the slides that out of the largest proportion that we had. Again, they were a facilitation of conversation. It's unfortunate that I should report at this time, in my humble opinion, that there were a significant number of questions, not so many answers. They were to be taken back and being provided back to us. We have not received a question and answer document per se, based on that meeting last Thursday. I have every expectation though, based on the volume of questions and the detail that would be needed to be provided to answer them, they'll be forthcoming from the RVH group that was tasked to take the lead on this local planning table. The biggest takeaway that we had from this is that there are vaccines that are rolling through. The most recent or the closest delivery that we can anticipate might be within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. The opportunity to maintain the integrity of those is the greatest priority right now, with notwithstanding the events of the weekend where Pfizer was hoping to have their storage opportunities relegated back to the level of a -20 or lower to -5 degrees within a freezer, rather than the current need to have it put on dry ice to keep it at the -80 that they have to continue to have the viability of the vaccine. So we haven't seen that here in Ontario yet. I haven't seen that in the United States either, but that's something that's being put forward until such time as it's been granted by whether it's the CDC or whether it's our own Health Canada to affirm that is a process that's acceptable. We will be seeing them dealt with in a manner that limits the potential wastage and limits the potential loss as a result of not keeping it at the appropriate temperatures. So I think that's what I can add. Mary, if you have any thoughts from the presentation?
I I did talk to Tanya McGregor, who is involved in this from the hospital point of view, and I did mention the numbers in phase 2 and 3. It looked like they used like in Renfrew's case, the total number of all our residents. So I just asked her about, well, the ones that are under 16 and maybe the ones that have already been done in phase 1. It doesn't look like they've removed them from the total population number. So just something they're going to look into, and it's hard to say what will happen. Maybe that number of 65 will turn down to number 6 or down to 60. I don't know. There's another question because of this situation being very out on the street, as Councillor Hines has said. I'm sure council members have questioned too. I asked Tanya if a representative from that planning board that's looking after this would be willing to come to our next council meeting and answer any questions. And I was assured that they would absolutely do that, which I think was kind of important in that, you know, they're just starting it now, and maybe within a couple of weeks, they'll have a lot of questions that they can answer. So that answer was yes. There was of course, they asked for accommodations, as you read back there, in municipalities, and Mattaway is their chosen one. And I said, well, I'd have to have council approval on it. But I also directed them to talk to Director Hill as to any kind of a plan they could put together. So I don't know if anybody here, I guess the easy way to handle this without getting into a lot is there anybody opposed to using Mattaway if Director Hill can work out a formula with them? So they don't seem to, yes, Reid Emo.
Not opposed to it, but I'm not sure what that means. And I guess I'll share the little bit of information I have. Today we had a health unit meeting and we talked to Dr. Cushman, and so we've been assured they'll adjust immunization to meet the changing needs of the community, because a number of us have expressed concern. 9 to 5, done at 12:30 on Friday, and if you don't make it in, tough beans. Because we know a number of people across our community that only have one vehicle or work away, and we pointed that out. And some of them are very worried about their employment right now, so they're not going to be able to take off at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon and stand in line for X number of hours or X number of minutes. They're not comfortable doing that. So we've been assured that there will be some flexibility. So I would hope that you two would take this back to the table in town as well, here in town, saying, look, it can't be a 9 to 5 bricks and mortar function. We were assured they were going to use the community paramedics program to reach out into the community to people that can't leave their homes or find it difficult. Especially now, there's some people are a little more anxious than they were a year and a half ago about leaving their homes. So again, I think if that's the kind of thing that can be communicated, I think the message that went today was that the program should serve the public, not the public serve the program. And I'm hopeful that that message rings true, because immunization only works effectively if everybody's immunized. But if we try to force people into the tube of showing up 9 to 5, Monday to Thursday, and be there by 12 on Friday, it's not going to work. So it has to be flexible. There has to be a mobile component. There has to be off hours for people who work and only have one vehicle. I'm a little concerned when I see that RVH's catchment area, which includes Denby and includes parts of Whitewater and parts of McNabb Braeside, it seems to be centered. So I'm not sure what's going to happen if there are 15,000 people show up and 900 of them from Whitewater and 400 from Denby and 600 from McNabb Braeside. You know, I think there has to be a realization built into the plan that people don't live in a box and they don't respect the borders of the box. So those are the kinds of things. And I'm a little curious. Today was announced by the Premier that there's going to be some magical system where people can book appointments for vaccinations. The province has a real tough time booking provincial parks. So I'm not sure how they're going to manage. I'm not sure how they're going to manage the vaccination thing. So I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'll wait and see. So I think those are things that have to be pushed back. There may be local solutions about booking. We already have VTAC with the 1-800 number and a website. Is that a viable vehicle simply for Renfrew County and District? Renfrew County and District, that's where you get the high numbers. It's 107,000 across that area. It's 14,500 square kilometers, because we go right over into Madawaska and the Whitney area. So I think the plan has to serve the people and not have the people serve the plan. So I'm hopeful that if you two gentlemen can take that back to the table, that it has to be flexible and it has to include everybody. And because it's probably one of the most serious programs we're ever going to mount. Because what happens when we have COVID-27, and I'm being facetious in a sense, but COVID-27 in 2027. So I think the plan we developed today will serve a lot of purposes over the next 10 or 15 years. And it has to be flexible and it has to meet people's needs. Otherwise, they're not going to go. If a person's at home with 3 kids, or they have to arrange babysitting and maybe they have to pick up some relatives and there's only one vehicle. So it's not as simple as just slapping up a poster and saying, come get stuck in your arm on August 21st, between 25 and, or between 16 and 65. So it's going to be interesting, and I hope you're able to take that message back. It has to be flexible. To your first question, I'm not sure that using an indoor facility in the summer months is the most effective, because you're snaking people in. You gotta monitor at 6 feet apart. You have to wipe down every surface depending on what variant. We've already had, I think, 4 variants of COVID or 3 variants of COVID emerged in the last 6 weeks. Will there be 2 more? I don't know. Will they be, more easily caught by people? I don't know. But I think, by forcing people through a building where somebody has to wipe down the doorknobs and keep you 6 feet apart and take the floors and put things up and take things down, I'm not sure that's the answer. When I look at, they're talking about using Wonderland near Barrie, where people drive in and there's different stations. Some of the Toronto sites have done that. You look at what they did with the testing in Ottawa a while ago when the Lanark County, Renfrew County, Ottawa paramedic services got together and had drive-through and did a lot of testing. I think they did something like 1,000 or 1,100 tests in one day. So I don't think we should be married to the building. The property, and if the building works, yes, but I think, there should be some care before everybody rushes out and starts warehousing people to get a vaccination. But that's my only several comments.
I totally agree with you, Rebimo. The program has to be flexible. And from what I heard that meeting, I think they are going to be very flexible in doing different things. The problem they may have is because of the way the vaccines come in, and especially the Pfizer, because of the freezing element, they may get, say, 1,000 vaccines in Renfrew. I'm just using this as an example, possibly on a Tuesday. Well, if you can't be there on Tuesday, you're going to miss the boat because they either have to use them or they'll go to waste. So they're going to have to work their way through that absolutely in some way or another. But I think they understand that, from what I gathered anyway. They understand there has to be flexibility. There was some talk about outside, inside, etc. I think what they're trying to do right now is set up a platform that covers all bases. And Mattaway could be used outside, could be used inside. They're also using the medical center, which they can do right now. They're doing phase 1 there right now, and that takes about 80 people a day, I think they can do. So I'd be really interested in having a representative at our next council meeting that could probably get into more detail on some of the answers or some of the questions you posed there. What else was I going to say? On Mattaway, that I asked them to get a hold of Director Hill to see what kind of usage they want of it, if they want it at all. There was no commitment to that other than, you know, if council was okay with it, and if they can set it up fine, and they can't fine it. And Director Hill's with us tonight, so I don't know, have somebody contacted you already, Director Hill, and you have anything to say on it?
Yes, we have been contacted. Staff have met with representatives from the hospital, and we've been able to show them through our facilities, which they're very happy with. We're just going to, I've told them that I will be meeting with the rec committee hopefully early next week to get some direction to respond to them with some of their questions. So they've reviewed the facility and are happy with it. So I think we're in good shape.
Okay. So that's.
If I may, Your Worship, just with reference to a couple of points that were sort of brought up through some of these supplementary questions. Communication is something, and the registration process is at the very beginning of it. Yes, they are aware of the success of VTAC, and I don't think that they're overlooking the potential of utilizing that. And of course, as has been identified with the provincial layout, there is a website that they're using to track all these, not unlike an e-health program. I think it's called COVEX is the title that they're giving it. And they're wanting to ensure that we have that interoperability of those so that when we do get to the process of vaccinations, they are able to track through a registration process who has arrived, who's been vaccinated, and on the dates that we're able to be vaccinated. But unfortunately, as the Reeve has very clearly pointed out, it's at the very early stages at a provincial level of that conversation, and getting it to work and being able to marry with some of the current technologies is one of the things they're working with. They're suggesting that there will be a multiple level of platforms for the opportunity to make the appointments. They're looking at obviously an online process if it's available within your community. It's supported through internet access as well as telephone access. And you hit on a good point with reference to the lack of a box per se, or sort of clearly defined borders. It was raised with reference to Admaston and Bromley that the northern part of Admaston and Bromley is more appropriately possibly serviced by Pembroke than it would be through Renfrew. And the comment was raised that citizens of Ontario will be receiving a vaccination. The question was raised about seasonal occupants and taxpayers that are in communities that have properties that may not be their primary residence. I think the health card identification is going to be the process that drives where you will be able to register to get your vaccinations taken care of. And of course, you would be tied to that on a future basis with reference to, I would expect that if you've received your vaccination at Pembroke, they would probably want to see you back there again because your timing is associated with that, and the documentation and record keeping would be facilitated greater if we don't have that interoperability that they're looking for through this COVEX process that they're using to register things. And of course, the other element that we're dealing with is at very beginning stages of planning, knowing that the supply chain hasn't been solidified to the greatest level of comfort. So most of these plans are wrapped around expectations of that solidity of that supply chain, a greater confidence of doses being distributed. And presently, I think that this local community is dealing with the prospects of, as you say, 130,000 people in an area that's at a relatively small caseload throughout the duration of COVID. Will the limited number of vaccines that are coming in be directed towards us to ensure overall success in mitigating any future cases, or will be sent off to some of those communities with a little bit higher rate of exposures currently and potentially for the future? So the whole concept of this table is to try and grapple and put best concepts on paper, best plans, and be as fluid and flexible as possible, knowing that they will change.
Further to that, I believe at that meeting they did mention the paramedics will probably be involved in this, but they also we have to understand that they're still doing a lot of testing. So depending how the manpower is distributed, but I did ask Tanya about are they going to be using volunteers, etc. And they thought they had enough staff available to handle this right now, one way or the other. The other thing I asked her a question on was, I'd heard something on TV about this, and this is not a vaccine like you go and get a flu shot. You go in, it's going to take about roughly in the neighborhood of 10 minutes to get registered and get your vaccine. And then there's a 15-minute wait time after you have your vaccine that you got to stay someplace. So they do need some space if they're inside. If outside, you sit in the car, I guess, and you honk your horn if you have a problem. So there's there's all kinds of things for them to work out. My God, they got a big job ahead of them, and I have a lot of confidence in what they're going to do. They so far with getting the testing done and everything, I think they've done a good job and seem to be on the right foot. But so anyway, but I'm looking forward if council is okay with somebody coming from their planning part to next week or next council meeting in 2 weeks, or the first one in March. If anybody opposed to that, whatever, I'll take it as agreeable to go ahead and do it. Redeemo.
Yes, thank you. And my comments aren't criticisms. I have a great deal of respect for the people that are trying to put this together. It's going to be difficult because it's so new and it's so fluid. And I think that's going to be both the challenge and the frustration for them. On some good news, had an article. I found an article yesterday, I think it was, and Israel has gone through most of their vaccination program at present, and they found out that the Pfizer vaccine, and it's only, they're going to do some more research, but it seemingly is very effective in meeting the challenges of the various variants that are emerging over the last couple of weeks as well. So the vaccines do seem to be working, and that's why it's so important that we try and get it out and get everybody vaccinated. So anyway, as soon as I get more information, I'll flip it across to you, but I stumbled across it yesterday.
Your worship, if I may, on the issue of the variants, there are 3 current variants that are being tracked within the province of Ontario: a Brazilian, a South African, and a California one. But at present, we have approximately 400 cases distributed amongst 24 of the public health units within the province. The greatest concern with the variants, obviously, is the virility of those, and that is it's a little bit easier for them to infect people than the others, and because you have the potential of unprotected exposures, one individual having the ability to, instead of basically a one-to-one caseload multiplier associated with the standard variant, these variants of concerns have a greater potential of maybe 1 to 1.5 or 2 or possibly 2.5 cases. So it's anticipated about May that we might see upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 of those variant cases within the province. And the Reeve is very accurate in suggesting, as the Ministry of Health suggested today, that current studies both in Israel as well as in the UK are identifying the fact that the current vaccines have the ability to deal with the variants. We just have to control the spread of the variants as best as possible using our standard measures of 6 feet worth of distance, masking when you can't maintain that 6 feet of distance, hand washing, and minimizing your contact outside of your bubbles as best you can.
And further to Redeemo's comment there about being a little bit controversial on this, I don't think there's anything controversial about it. We all have 100 questions to ask on this and whatever. But the one thing they did point out, and we've all seen it in the media, this disease, from things can change from day to day. Like tomorrow we could be sitting here and have a whole different discussion, and that's the problem with it. You can't put a 100% plan together and say, it's just buying. And so it's a moving target. And I think if we knew exactly how many vaccines we're going to get in on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, we could put a plan together, or they could put a plan together an awful lot easier. So again, we'll have someone come to our next meeting if they so choose. I asked them and they said they would. So we'll take it from there. And then, of course, in 2 weeks from now, or the first Tuesday in March, I'm sure there's going to be 100 more questions that'll be different than what they are tonight even. So anyways, they got a start to it, and I'm very encouraged that they got this start. I have a lot of confidence in the people they have together on it there, and they seem to be open to any suggestions or talk or questions. So anyway, that they're moving ahead in the right path and whatever. And I wish them all the luck in the world. It's going to be something else. Anyway, anything else on this? Okay, hearing nothing. I guess we had a mover and a seconder there. We need all in favor of receiving the report. Thank you. Okay, that the minutes of the Waste Management Committee meeting held February the 3rd, 2021 be received. Over, please. Reeve Mo, seconded by Councillor Hines. Turn it over to Reeve Mo.
Thank you. We met electronically on February the 3rd. And I'll take you down to item number 8, the landfill report. We reviewed the tonnage for January, and year over year, we're going to try to make sure we have a year over year comparison available from now on. Our compactor was out of service for approximately 4 days, and there was a failed fan hub, and it was unfortunately a couple of days past the, or maybe a couple of weeks past the warranty date. Our staff pushed back, noting that it was a sealed unit installed at the factory. There's nothing we could have done to provide maintenance to extend its life. So we've since heard that they're doing some. They're going to cover a portion of it. Not sure yet how much, but we'll know more at our next meeting. So kudos to our staff for pushing back, and also to the supplier. And Golder has completed a review of the town's practices for our handling and disposal of sewage sludge, and our current practice is acceptable. And just to be indelicate and very quick about it, it comes in a bit of a slurry. It's dumped in a portion of the landfill site. Some sand is put into it and filled to make it a little more manageable, so that's not quite as runny. And then it's taken up and spread on the face of the cell that we're using at the time. So not an attractive job and not an attractive description, but it's acceptable what we're doing. They're also looking at stage 5 and getting us some information on that. And we are working to obtain the groundwater rights. You'll remember that was part of our annual plan, is over the next 5 years to do that. So one of our, part of our conversation is we think we have an estimated time frame of approximately 20 years. And we think some of the actions that we've taken may slow down the rate of consumption of the landfill capacity. So we're going to try and map it out, what the transition is from stage 4 to stage 5, 20 years from now, if that's the window. So we wanted to make sure we had a little more information on that. Part of it is too that we're looking at what does it look like. One of the conversations we had was using the space where the scale and the building is now as capacity. So does that mean moving it to the rest of that facility to the back of the landfill site and coming in, is it possible to come in across from the entrance to the gravel pit, so close down that one entrance way. So that's how far we're taking it, to try and get as much space as we can and extend the life. We're also asking what other things we can grind. Great success with the mattresses, by grinding mattresses and couches and stuff like that. We're very comfortable with that being the right approach, because it really saves space for us in the landfill site. Donation bins, it's a standing item. We're still trying to track some of those things down and get some enforcement on it. Food cycler trial update. We're in the process. COVID has delayed it a bit, but we're going to get interested residents who might be willing. Bylaw enforcement for multi-residential units. There has been some instances where the recycling and trash has been put out a bit early, and that's caused some problems with bags being opened or containers being knocked over. So we're trying to work that out with them. So we're going to set up a meeting with the owners just to talk waste management issues. Is there a better way of doing it rather than putting it out on the sidewalk? Can we, work out if with the next contract, or maybe a change to the contract going on to their property to a specific site and picking it up? So we're going to try and be flexible and make it work so that it's a tidier looking operation for them and for us as well. And with that, we started what we call a drawer. So we're putting in scraps of paper on changing the waste management bylaw and future collection contracts. So we'll be doing that over the next little while. It's a yellow sticky approach. And so we'll be back to you with a waste management bylaw at some point in the near future. And financial reports, as you can see, we're in the process of invoicing our partners for the Household Hazardous Waste Depot. And we are of the belief that we're going to run a deficit for 2020, given the difficulties we had with COVID, loss of revenue, but then also we had some costs that went with that. So the grinding opportunities, again, we're going to 9.5, the grinding opportunities. We talked about what else can we grind? We see plastic pools going in, the smaller ones, we see toys, all sorts of things that we think we can grind into smaller chips and then be able to bury those and they'll take up less space and or use them as part of our top covers. So those are the kinds of things we're looking at is trying to pull more things out of the waste stream. We want to recycle more, we want to divert more if we can. And we're also, as you know, we're going to send up a reuse center at some point in the next little while down there too. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing to try and extend the life. And with that, we went in close to talk about something in terms of a groundwater easement, and we're getting more information on it. As you can see, to discuss the acquisition, but then also we want to see about using some of the reserve funds that are available for legal fees and acquisition costs. So we're going to get some answers for that. So with that, that was our meeting. So respectfully submitted to council on behalf of myself, Councillor Evans and Mayor Eadie.
Okay, any questions, council members? Councillor Hines.
Great report. Lots of things happening at the waste management side of things. But just wondering, is there any thing happening with recycling food scraps? Other municipalities such as Pembroke do that, and it goes to the landfill site, create a soil compost, and people are able to go and get that. Is there any work being done on that, or that will be part of your little sticky drawer?
That's part of the sticky drawer. We've had some pretty general and far-reaching conversations on it. The one thing we know is if it's a municipally run program where it's picked up at the curb, it's expensive. And then what do we do with the product? So we're still in the, let's talk about it and see if we can sort out what the problem is, what the opportunities are, and whether we can afford it. So
okay.
Nothing formal, but there has been we've had a lot of conversation, and we're picking Tyler's brain, and Mayor Eadie's had previous experience with it. I've done a little bit of a rural application before, where people brought it to a Moloch, and so there was some problems, and then there was Molochs at some of the local restaurants as well. So we have some history with it. So we're just trying to sort it out so we can do it as inexpensively as possible. To be honest with you, that's going to be the key.
Maybe further to that, the province is kind of going to be talking about pushing that a wee bit, but I would hope they would hold off till the province is supposed to be taking over all of the recycling programs for all of Ontario. And if they do that, that would be the time to move into something else, because it would cost you pretty much the same amount of money to do that program as it would to do our recycling program right now. But it's not inexpensive to do, and I don't think the taxpayers would want to be burdened with that right now for sure. So possibly down the road when they take it over, that would be the time. I think Revimo, that would be reasonable.
Yeah, that's part of the conversation, is trying to read the provincial tea leaves as to what's going to happen before 2024.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay. That the minutes of the Development and Works Committee meeting held February the 9th, 2021 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Coolidge, seconded by Councillor Sidney. Turn it over to Councillor Coolidge for the report. I guess you're on mute, Councillor Coolidge.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Your Worship. This meeting was a short one, 9th of February, electronically, of course. We did deal with a couple of items I'll draw your attention to. There has been some complaints about excessive speed on Otter Ridge. I think we discussed this already at council the last meeting, but to bring you up to speed on it, so to speak, we did do some traffic counting on that street. It has been determined that it's being used as a cut through between Hall and Froats. And it's a short-term thing, of course, a short-term problem in that we will eventually have Hall Street extended in the next, hopefully the next 24 to 36 months, and that will eliminate this problem. But it would appear that the speed is not as excessive as what is being complained about. The speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour in all residential streets unless otherwise marked. And in this case, the speed was, the highest speed was 57 or 58 kilometers an hour. Not really justifiable to put any signage up or that sort of thing, and the expense that it incurs. We are going to, staff has been directed to contact the OPP to request additional monitoring on that street. Our building report for this meeting, there was 12 new townhome permits applications were received in December and processed in January. The Lapine Development has just submitted their second portion of their superstructure permit. So that's for their second building. And lot development fees, of course, will be collected prior to issuing the permit for this structure. There's been some property standards complaints from residents using wood stoves for heat. And wood stoves are acceptable in the town of Renfrew, by the way, as long as they're wet certified. But it's the burning, we're assuming it's the burning of other than wood products that creates an obnoxious smell. So the bylaw enforcement people have been notified about these complaints, and we'll monitor that. Committee congratulated our chief building official, Mr. Webster, on his successful completion of his complex building certification. And this allows him to review and inspect every type of building within the Ontario Building Code. As you know, we did discuss this, that Mr. Webster is also working through an agreement with the town, with Greater Madawaska to assist them in some large complex buildings that they're dealing with at the present time. We did review some our projects, our capital budget projects at that meeting. A lot of the stuff that is now being discussed and is in this report has to do with our asset management and our water and wastewater licensing and so on that we discussed at length earlier in this meeting. So it really is not relevant yet until we get that done, and then we will move ahead with our not only our asset management and related report, but also the drinking water license that we've asked for an extension on as well. So that's pretty much the meeting.
Okay. Any questions on the report? Revimo.
Thank you. Just wondering if the numbers at this time for 7.1, when you took a look at the output of the camera, Because I think it was done about 5 years ago. Is there any substantial change in those numbers? Because I think I was on Development of Works at one point when we had put something there.
We've not seen anything from the report that's radically different than what we've had in the past. It just seems that we have, I mean, we've had this complaint issued to us in January, and this complaint from one resident on that street. So obviously we take every concern into consideration when we investigate this stuff. So we've kind of come to the conclusion that it's not as serious as we might have thought originally. There is more traffic. We acknowledge that there's more traffic there, and we do have the timelines that it seems to be much busier. They're much busier at 9 to 10 and 1 to 2 in the afternoon. Some of the weekend times are a little heavier as well. But it's a cut through to come to the end of come to the three-way stop at the end of Hall, and rather than turn right onto Gillen, they go ahead and then turn right onto Foxden and over onto Otter Ridge and circle around onto Froats, and then they come out at the lights there at the Tim Hortons, or in some cases just go into No Frills. That's where they're heading anyway, and it's a little, they find it quicker. So once we get Hall extended and around to the roundabout at Froats, that will eliminate all of that traffic, and that's coming as soon as the developer finishes what he's supposed to be doing at the backside of Otter Ridge. He's applied to build more homes in there.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay, that the minutes from the Renfrew Public Library Board meeting held January 19th, 2021 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Sidney. Turn over to Councillor Evans. You wish to give a report? You're on mute.
Thank you, Don. Mayor Hady. Our meeting in January 19th, the statistics for the months of November and December of 2020 actually look quite healthy considering the pandemic. December was a very, very strong month, and November saw an uptick in the numbers in general. Monthly financial statements for November 2020 and December 2020. The library is now, or was, under budget by 4%. Revenues were up a bit due to grants and the agreement with Horton Township. Memberships are increasing with each of the two lockdowns so far. We also have business arising from minutes. We were presented with the financial report and also, I guess more exciting, the drawings that were requested for the new building. I guess how would we say this? The librarian has had discussions with the town's treasurer, and they're discussing proposed methods of payment. This was back in November. We've subsequently dealt with those already. Signing authorities were handed over to two board members. That's a typical housekeeping chore, as well as discussing representation from our new municipality of Horton. Their representation being either a council member from Horton and or a member of the public. It was decided actually that we would defer that until the next municipal elections and maybe seek municipal representation from a council member there. There was a slight flood in the basement of the building. There was a hot water tank leak, or a faucet was left on in one of the janitorial closets. Unfortunately, there was, at the time of this report, there was $4,000 of damages, water damage to the building, which is actually being addressed and probably should have been finished by now. It was a rather short meeting, 35 minutes. That's my report.
Any questions on this? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Sidney?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring a couple of other things that have happened since those minutes that I think are pretty important to let council know. There are some things that have been happening that you know, if councillors are talking to anybody that have in-home daycares, one of the things that the library is doing is there's a caregiver's corner which gives them access to packages containing everything they need, hold their own story time, including stories, rhymes, crafts, etc., that they can take home. We had another flood on top of that, the one that Councillor Evans was talking about. So we're currently looking at you know, some of the infrastructure of the building and stuff like that. One other cool thing that they're really excited about is Google Expedition headsets have been purchased thanks to a seniors community grant. Obviously, once COVID sort of dies down a little bit, it will allow staff to take people on a guided virtual tour of almost anywhere in the world. So it's like a virtual headset that they can go into retirement homes, nursing homes, and allow people to walk the streets of Italy and go for drives and gondola rides and stuff like that. So it's they're really doing a lot of great outreaching, and virtual programming continues to go really well, and they keep the participants increase weekly. So the library is extremely busy.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, that the Renfrew Library Activity Report dated for December 2020, January 2021 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Evans. Councillor Sidney, maybe you might have covered some of this already, and was this part of what you're talking of there? And
yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll try and answer them. But as you can see in the lengthy activity report, how busy the library is and the new things that they are doing. I know that one of the things we discussed at our last meeting last week, the library is looking at you know, preliminary talks right now of the 100th anniversary this year of the Carnegie building. Obviously with the loan from the town to get the drawings, that part has already started. So there's a lot of excitement looking at where that's going to be. And it looks like almost the discussion is heading into a bit of a rebranding of the library, because it is so much more than, I think there's sometimes there's confusion when you use the word library, that people think it's only where you can go get books. And the library is so much more than that in our community. It's almost like our resource center without it being called a resource center. So the library is really looking at how these drawings and maybe some fundraising opportunities and being able to go forward with the building in a bit of a rebrand for the 100th anniversary. So there's a lot of exciting things going on, but if anybody does have any questions about the activity report, I will try and answer them.
Okay, any questions, council? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay. The Renfrew Town Council convened in closed session for the following matter pursuant to Section 239 Municipal Act 2001. Pursuant to Section 239(2)(f) of the Municipal Act 2001, divide that this is a subject of solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, more specifically as it relates to the municipal structure review. Over, please. Revimo, seconded by Councillor Hines. We're now in closed session. I guess all in favor of being in closed. Okay.
I'm wondering, Your Worship, if we could take a 5-minute bio break. Otherwise, you might see the unseemly picture of the reeve diving out of cover to find a small bottle.
I was just going to say the same
Yes.
thing, and when we
And
come
I'm gonna
back, Ravimo, I'll turn it over to you as Chair of Human Resources on this issue.
Sure.